Ladies and gentlemen, next we will have a panel featuring a conversation with Secretary Elaine Chao and Eugene Scalia, moderated by Dan Schneider.
I think you sit here and I sit here.
I am not a smart political operative. A smart political operative would not share his real views about a cabinet secretary. But there were many cabinet secretaries in the Bush administration, and I am seated next to the very best one, Elaine Chao.
Thank you.
And I've got evidence of it. I actually worked for Secretary Chao at the Labor Department. And on my very first day, she gave me the single best mission statement a cabinet secretary I think has ever given. Dan, I want you to scour the country, find the most effective conservatives who can fight and win. You've got 6 months to recruit them and bring them to the department. Her first assignment to me was to get Eugene Scalia confirmed as the solicitor at the Labor Department.
Or at least appointed.
He at that time was considered the finest labor lawyer in the land, and today he is the Secretary of Labor. So to my right, it is my distinct privilege to have two extraordinary secretaries, Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Labor. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Nice to see you all.
And even though Eugene Scalia has only been confirmed for about 5 months, he has not let moss grow under his feet. He has already done some very aggressive work in finalizing an important regulation on the joint employer rule. These sorts of regulations that are pulling back on regulations and allowing the economy to grow are what these two cabinet secretaries are really focusing on. I'd like to turn to Secretary Chao first. You're a real leader on innovation. There's the commercial space, there's drones, there's things like this. But how do you reduce burdensome regulations at the same time that you're promulgating rules for the future?
Well, I'm really proud of the fact that the Department of Transportation is #1 in terms of our deregulatory activities. So we have actually implemented 63 deregulatory agenda items. And upon, of course, the mandate of Congress, instituted 6 new ones that are
That's amazing.
regulatory. So it's a 63-6 ratio. And the president, as you well know, in February 2017, said that for every 1 new regulation, 2 have to be withdrawn. So we're very, very proud of the fact that we're really ahead of that ratio. And I think what's really needed is a common sense approach. I want to give Steve Bradbury, who's a general counsel at the department, some credit as well, because he took that regulatory reform agenda and made it into a rule on rules at the Department of Transportation. And what that means is really codifying how we do regulations and deregulations. And this also means that guidance documents should not be a form of regulation that is cited in courts and that would be on the basis for enforcement. And Jing actually did a lot of that also when he was at the Department of Labor. So I think we need to talk to Jing about what he did over there.
Well, the two departments have a shared goal of safety.
Absolutely.
So how are you measuring safety? How are you getting these safety outcomes in the most economical way possible?
We're actually performance-based. So some departments, they go out and they have quotas on how many inspections, how many reviews, how many audits. We are performance-based. We're fact-based. So we focus on the bad actors, and a lot of the bad actors are responsible for the majority of the infractions. So we're focused, and we really see what our actions will actually yield in terms of overall performance in deterring the kind of behaviors that we want to discourage. Gene?
Yeah, I mean, that's important to us. And look, we're focused on the welfare of the American worker. That is the heart of the mission of the Labor Department. And the single most important thing the federal government can do for American workers is support and sustain a vibrant economy. And that's what this president has done. And that's why we're experiencing what the president in his State of the Union address called this blue-collar boom. We've just got a very vibrant job market right now with unemployment at basically a 50-year low, and unemployment for some populations, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, hit the lowest levels ever recorded at the end of last year. Deregulation. Deregulation has been absolutely central to that. And Dan, as you said, I've been in the job 5 months. It's a great honor. It's been a great experience. I was in the private sector for many years before that, and I've been very focused. I've really been a student of regulatory policy for decades now, going back to the Reagan administration. And I will tell you that the deregulatory program of this president is the most ambitious, the most effective change in regulatory policy since we started doing cost-benefit analysis of federal rules all the way back in the Reagan administration. The change is that great, and again, you see the fruits of that in how the economy is doing right now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
how many people out there own a small business, run a small business, operate a small business? Many of you. These are the drivers of our economy.
And they create jobs.
They create jobs. Just to go back to a little storytelling, one of the first things Secretary Chao did with her excellent solicitor was, and correct me where I'm wrong about this, Madam Secretary, she published the enforcement manual. Because she knew that employers are not bad people. They want to comply with the law. They want to comply with regulations instead of having this gotcha game. How does that, for both of you, how does that work at transportation and at labor to make sure that we are helping employers, helping contractors, construction workers to get things done in an effective, safe manner?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been emphasizing is what's known as the constitutional principle of fair notice, which the Supreme Court has paid a lot of attention to recently as well. And the idea is simple. The public has a right to know what the law is so it can conform its conduct and behave appropriately.
Imagine that.
And what that means is that we don't announce the law for the first time in a lawsuit with a creative new interpretation of the law. Instead, we let people know what the law is. The law is on a statute. It's in a regulation. It's not in some guidance document. And once the public knows the law, yeah, we have important enforcement responsibilities. But that principle of fair notice is something that we've been paying a lot of attention to. And of course, that's part of what, Elaine, what your rule on rules and about guidance is trying to achieve too.
It shouldn't be a gotcha game. People need to know what the laws are. They need to comply. But to comply, they need to know what their obligations are. And I think that's what is important in conveying.
So Secretary Scalia, if I hope this isn't just bias here, but I think you are the greatest labor lawyer in the country. We're very pleased and honored to have you here today, and as the American public, having you serve as the Secretary of Labor. Secretary Chao has a Harvard MBA and all kinds of credentials.
I hope you don't hold it against me.
We've talked about innovation. And the Department of Transportation, of course.
We're doing lots of really exciting things. We're the regulators, basically, of autonomous vehicles, of drones, of commercial space. Our number one priority is safety. And so a very simple way of making everybody safe is to tell everybody you can't move. You can't take your car out of the garage. You can't go from A to B. Then you'll be safe. We'll all be safe. But the real challenge is, as regulators, how do we engage with emerging new technologies to address legitimate public concerns about safety, security, and privacy without hampering innovation? Because innovation is a trademark of who we are as Americans. That is our greatest export.
So Secretary
We are
Chao,
predominant in the world for creativity and innovation.
I think the Obama administration was pushing in this direction. Are you just doing exactly what the Obama administration did?
Oh my gosh. I thought
Is
you
that
were
a good
my
question?
friend. No, I think so this is a very important, we are not top down, we are not command and control. We believe in the wisdom of the American people. We're going to let them decide what cars they want, what kind of innovation they're willing to accept. And I think for a lot of the new innovation, the primary factor in determining how fast autonomous vehicles are adopted, for example, or how slowly, will be consumer acceptance. And the whole issue about EVs, electric vehicles, we're not going to command that consumers have to address them. We really think that the free market works, the private sector works, and we need to let the consumer decide.
So this is an exciting time in transportation with electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles. But what about the guy who drives a 1969 MGC?
You can still do that.
Or 1975 Datsun 280Z. These are the kind of cars I like to drive.
I think we're going to have to accommodate a transition period. There'll be people who will want to hold on to their cars.
Yes.
So that is why this whole technology about vehicle-to-vehicle communications, vehicle-to-building communications, vehicle-to-infrastructure, the Internet of all things is going to be very important.
Right.
And so that brings us to another topic, which I don't know whether we want to get into. But this whole Wi-Fi spectrum issue will be very important.
It's critical.
It's critical. And so, oh, by the way, we have brought 400 copies of AV 4.0, Autonomous Vehicles 4.0. The previous administration in 2016 issued a guidance document for autonomous vehicles innovation. It was basically a roadmap for trial attorneys. We don't believe that. We believe in the triumph of the human spirit. And so we came out with AV 2.0, a pathway to safety, AV 3.0, and because technology is changing so quickly, we now have new guidance that basically harmonizes the 38 different federal agencies that regulate autonomous vehicles, drones, and these other new technologies. It's called AV 4.0, Maintaining American Leadership in Autonomous Vehicles. And so it should be out here someplace. If you see it, please do pick it up. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah,
You've got to ask Secretary Scalia.
Well, these innovations are help driving the economy.
Yes.
Secretary Scalia, how's the economy doing?
Great.
I mean, it really is historic, right? As I said, we've got 3.6% unemployment. That's a number most of us thought we'd never hear. It's right about a 50-year low. And when you look at particular populations, you see last year, for example, we had the lowest unemployment for adult women in about 70 years. Just, extraordinary unemployment numbers, but wages are rising too. And as the president emphasized in the State of the Union, they're rising more quickly for lower wage workers. You look at the lowest 10% by income, compare them to the top 10%, the lower 10% are doing better. The lower income Americans have seen 15% wage growth since the start of this administration. And so that's why the president spoke about a blue-collar boom. But just to throw a couple more statistics at you that I find especially meaningful. The Congressional Budget Office in the summer of 2016 made a projection. This is meant to be bipartisan office within Congress, does economic forecasting, and in the summer of 2016 it said, hey, by early 2020, now, they said we'd have 4.9% unemployment. 4.9. And they said between summer 2016 and now, they said we'll have created 1.9 million jobs. That was their forecast. Well, like I said, we're not at 4.9% unemployment. We're at 3.6, and we haven't created 1.9 million jobs. We created 2.1 million jobs last year. We've created 6.6 million jobs since the president came in. And so then you say, well, what changed? What's different? Yeah. Summer 2016, now what changed? We got a new president. And we got new policies, new priorities tax cuts, deregulations, and trade deals, which are going to be so important going forward, too. I think a lot of great things have happened in the last 3 years, but you take the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, for example, which really was meant for American workers, to keep jobs here, to promote higher-paying jobs in this country. You look at changes like that, too, and I think the prospects look strong going forward as well.
When Secretary Chao sat me down in her office years ago and said, Dan, scour the country, find the most effective conservatives, get them here. She then said, because personnel is policy, and we have to drive policy through the selection of the best people possible. And I've got to tell you, President Trump has picked the 2 finest people to be running these 2 departments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The American people, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.